Now, here's the downsides of arbitrage that a lot of people don't talk about. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode. Today, I decided to make a video based around short-term rental arbitrage. Now, I know I've been doing a lot of these short clips. This one might go a little bit longer. And the reason why I wanted to do it is because I want to talk about if you should do short-term rental arbitrage. The reason why I bring this up is because there's a lot of people out there that you might have heard say, or people that are talking about, oh, you shouldn't do arbitrage. Arbitrage is really bad. You're gonna lose all your investment. It's only gonna last as long as the lease. Oh my God, what if the owner kicks you out? The property manager is gonna say no, the neighbors are gonna complain, etc., etc., etc. I mean, there's a long list of people complaining about this all the time. So I wanted to clear the air, talk about what the actual downside is and what the upside is of doing short-term rental arbitrage, and if you should be the one to do it. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to address before anything else is if it's right for you. Now listen, a lot of people always ask me and they go, hey, do you think I should start with arbitrage, or should I go and buy my own short-term rental in a local like market or a house or a cabin? And the answer is, it depends on where you are in life. What's your place right now in terms of investment and what your risk tolerance is? Now, if you're in a situation where you have $100,000 laying around and you need to put it into a solid investment, you might want to go out and purchase your first short-term rental in a very lucrative vacation rental market. For sure, 100%. $100,000 could get you enough for a down payment and maybe even the furnishing cost. I've seen people do it. Now, if you're in a situation where you have very little money and you want to get into your first investment and you want to get your foot in the door, then short-term rental arbitrage might be better for you, right? Where are you in life right now? What's your personal situation for you to decide, hey, I think this is right for me? For me, it was because when I started, I had no money, very little money to get started. So therefore, the best way for me to do it was to start arbitrage. And I've said it before, it was a credit card and some cash that I had, right? And if you haven't seen that, go back and watch my video on how I turned the credit card into a 7-figure business. And it's no joke. Now, if you're in a situation in life where you can't tolerate the risk of maybe having an investment in, because you've saved up, 10 grand, and you want to get to a point where you start actually generating revenue, but you can't tolerate the risk factor of maybe it only does last 12 months, then maybe arbitrage isn't the best case for you and you might want to save your money for a more secure investment. There's a reason why I no longer take money for short-term rental arbitrage investments. And that is because I know that there's a risk factor involved and I don't want to play with other people's money when I know what the risk is for that investment specifically. Now, here's the downsides of arbitrage that a lot of people don't talk about. Yes, you could get kicked out of a building in 12 months when your lease is up. Yes, you can only be in the building as long as the lease allows it, or you have permission from the landlord or property manager to be there. Yes, you could lose your entire investment if they shut you down. There's a lot of different things involved in terms of risk when it comes to doing arbitrage. But here's the upside. You start with very little money. Yes, you can get your money back very, very fast, right? Your $10,000 investment can come back in 10 months. Number two, you can really scale this out very fast because if you build one good relationship, you can open multiple units in one location. You don't have to go and pick and choose very specific markets. You can pick over specific buildings and take certain units in that building. Now, here's another upside. If you do this correctly and you build a really good relationship with a landlord and an owner, that landlord and that owner will most likely end up giving you units for you to arbitrage more as you start building that relationship with them. So you do the first one, they like how you operate, they like what you do. From there on, they're gonna give you another unit. Hey, we have another unit available, do you want it? And you'll be able to scale very, very fast. Now, here's a very big upside in comparison to purchasing. A lot of investors that I know that are purchasing eventually cap out on the certain amount of loans that they can get, or the certain number of people that they can get to work with them to get other loans. In arbitrage, you don't need that. So if you're an investor and you get stuck at a point where, hey, I can't get any more loans under my name, I have all this capital sitting around, I wanna generate more cash flow, arbitrage is a really great way to do that. You take that capital, you open 5, 10 units, and you have 10 units cash flowing you $10,000 a month, maybe even more, maybe even less, I don't know, depends on your market, but it could be a very, very lucrative investment. Now, here's another downside of doing arbitrage. A lot of people think that it's as simple as going into a building, throwing the unit on Airbnb, and then they start cash flowing. It's not. You have to get permission to do it from the landlord 100%. That means you have to be transparent about what you're doing with that landlord or that property management company. Don't go in there and tell them that you're going to be running a medical traveler or a housing business professionals, and then they see a bunch of young kids and people coming and going, and they don't know that you're on Airbnb. You have to be transparent, because if you're not transparent, then yes, your risk just goes up higher, because now you're at the risk of them kicking you out at the moment that they find out that you're using Airbnb. So that's one of the downsides. But the upside is that if you do it correctly, I mean, I've been in buildings where I've been in them for 3.5+ years, and I'm still operating there with no issues, because the manager knows what I do. They like the way I manage, they like the way I handle situations, and they love the way we handle our business, so we never have any actual problems. So the second downside is you need to know your numbers exactly. It's not as simple as just get it furnished and put it up on Airbnb. If you don't run numbers correctly, you can make very little money, like practically nothing. Although I preach all the time and I talk about how good it is all the time and that you can make a ton of money, there is its downsides, because a lot of people don't take into consideration the high rents. Somebody might come in and go, oh, well, this is a $3,000 one-bedroom apartment that I can make $5,000 a month, and they'll take very high rent because they think that they're gonna cash flow a bunch of money on top. Yes, you're gonna cash flow a bunch of money on top, but you gotta remember that there's costs like electricity, water, utilities, internet, laundry, cleaning services, although that's a pass-through expense and we can do something else about that later. Virtual assistants if you have them, if you're trying to scale. Resupply costs, toilet paper, paper towels, soap, detergent, all that other stuff. And those are costs that people don't put into consideration, and those costs can very quickly destroy your profit, right? If you're doing $3,000 a month in rent, and then from there you have to pay $600 on top of all these management expenses, now you're at $3,600 and you're only doing $4,000 a month in revenue, you're only doing about $400 profit. Is that enough profit for you? I don't know. You decided that. That's up to you. There's a lot of ups and downs with why arbitrage is really good and why it's not. So the other part I want to get to is the other downside of doing arbitrage is that you don't actually own the property. So that hard asset, that house that you own, is yours. If you go out and you put your money into the property, you own it now. You're building equity over time. Cash flow builds quick cash, equity builds wealth over time. So there's two downsides to that. You can be very wealthy and be very cash poor. That means you're not generating any revenue. I know hundreds of investors who are millionaires. They have millions and millions and millions of dollars of property, but they're generating no cash. So they're cash poor, but they're very wealthy, right? They're asset rich. Now, it depends on how you look at it. It could be a good thing or a bad thing. I go for cash flow. But the thing I'm getting at here is that if you put your money into arbitrage and you're running arbitrage for cash flow, you're not taking advantages of that equity. Now, that might not affect some of you. It didn't affect me until I got large enough to where I was generating very taxable heavy cash flow. And once you get to that point, then it's a downside to be an arbitrage, because now you have too much money coming in, and in some cases that's a really good thing, right? But when you have that much money coming in, you need to be able to offset that income with some kind of tax incentives, and that comes from owning the property. And if you don't own the property, you can't write anything off. So you get where I'm going here? But that leads to why arbitrage is such a good investment. It generates such heavy cash flow to the point where you scale so fast and you generate life-changing income literally like that. But when you get to that point, it's generating such heavy taxable income that at that point you come in and you need to figure out what you're gonna do with that cash. Otherwise, you're giving it all back to Uncle Sam, and nobody wants to pay the government extra taxes. So there's two things that you gotta put in mind here. When you first start, put a goal into place, whether it's a 3-year goal, a 5-year goal, to open a certain number of units, get to a certain amount of revenue, and arbitrage can be really good for you. You can open 10 units and make $10,000 a month and live happy and be on your own, or you can open 20 and start putting that cash into a property and start owning property over time. And in the meantime, you're building relationships with owners, you're learning investing, you're learning real estate, you're learning how to hospitality. Keep in mind, we're in the hospitality business too, right? It's not you're investing in real estate, you're investing in a short-term rental strategy, which is a real estate investment strategy itself. So hopefully this video was helpful. I know I kind of went on a rant here on two different things, but if you think arbitrage is right for you, weigh your options. If you think it's stupid and you don't want to do it because of the risks, then odds are you're probably not doing it right, or you don't know how to do it correctly. Because I got to tell you, I've been doing it for a very long time, and I'm still doing it now. And the reason why I continue to do it is because I know how far my money goes in rental arbitrage as opposed to me owning a property. I don't care about equity right now. I care about cash flow, and I want my income to be coming in every single month so that then I can take that money and go into other businesses. I have a Turo business, I have a lot of crypto invested, I have an NFT project going, I now own property, so I'm constantly investing my money that I'm making into other projects, and arbitrage was able to do that. So if you think that you want to start off a business that's cash flow heavy because you want it to be your funding source for another business, then arbitrage could be very good for you. Hopefully that was helpful, and I'll see you on the next one.